You are listening to Cemetery Confessions, the world's #1 goth talk podcast.
All right, hello, and welcome back to Cemetery Confessions. This month, we are continuing our special series of expert panels as we take deep dives into latent issues and hot topics within the community. Previously, we discussed whether or not goth was political, and we've explored the deeply ingrained misogyny of industrial. And this week, we are exploring the intersectionality and experiences of people of color. Whether goth or not, in the West, we live in a culture built on colonization, whitewashing, and imperialism. The stories around which our culture connects are white, our histories are littered with appropriation of indigenous practices, and our present is full of tacit ignorance around the ways that we continue to reinforce the pain and inequality for people of color in our communities. Oppressed groups like Black women have a barrier to self-actualization that privileged groups who benefit from a history of imperial patriarchy do not. For as much lip service as we give to goths being othered, discriminated against, and bullied out of society, the face of our scene is very often still white. The diversity of gender, sexual expression, and transgression of power structures was implicit to the music scene in the 80s. Today, however, the ways in which people of color are represented and welcomed in our scene gets little of the attention among the discourse of cultural issues like commodification, defining boundaries, and music recommendation. Being as that we live in a time when the stories we build our identities around, in America at least, are in flux and being discussed and debated, this seems like a gross oversight within the goth communities. So on today's episode, we've assembled a panel of scene vets, musicians, bloggers, DJs, and more to discuss where our culture stands against the mechanisms of racial division and where it falls prey to perpetuating systemic inequality. So as always, I am the Count, and I'm here with my co-host Trey. Hello, Trey.
Hello, Count. Hello, our esteemed panel
Of experts. Briefly, I should mention, Kyle of the Breathing Light was with us today, but unfortunately had some technical issues that rendered him incapable of being on the show. So I'll still link to the Breathing Light in the show notes. They're a great local band, at least to me, that you should all check out. So thanks Kyle for coming on, and I'm sorry it didn't work out. But for those who are here, we're going to go around the circle and introduce everyone. And what I'm looking for is if you can tell us sort of the story of how you first came into contact with goth or alternative culture, how you got into that, and then mention where we can find your projects online. So, Leela, we can start with you.
Yeah, so I was thinking about this question, and I can't really recall any sort of specific thing or instance. It just sort of seemed like there was my life before Susie and the Banshees and then after. And so this was, so I guess I sort of discovered Susie and The Cure and Joy Division. Like this was like 85. I was about like 13. And, Detroit had really amazing record shops and really amazing radio stations. And, I think my best friend Sarah was much more on top of music than I was. So maybe she bought a record and introduced me. I don't know, but it just seemed like this thing that just sort of and I also discovered Anne Rice about the same time. So both of those two things together sort of formed myself at that angsty, 13-year-old me. Yeah, and I was like an avid reader of Smash Hits magazine. This is probably dating me. This British pop music fan mag that had like new wave and new romantic stuff and everything. So, yeah, I think it just was, and it just manifested into being my gothness. And Yeah, it's not a very interesting origin story. But my project is sort of about me being a goth kid in Detroit, um, and also about Blackness in America and how the Gothic in America is sort of manifested through African American culture, and how Black
Mm,
history and sort of the remnants of slavery and sort of the residual trauma of chattel slavery and white supremacy is manifested in the culture, in art,
mm,
in music and literature. And what I'm kind of saying is that is the American Gothic aesthetic, that it's not, the Black Gothic. America's Gothic is the African American experience. So,
mm.
yeah, it's a little bit of a memoir and a little bit of a cultural critique and a little bit of history. Um, yeah, and it's called Darkly, Blackness in America's Gothic Soul. Oh, I take that back. Actually, they're changing the subtitle to Black History in America's Gothic Soul. And it's coming out in November.
Yay!
Very good. Is that can we pre-order that yet, or is it
You
not
know,
up?
you can. It is available on
Oh, okay.
Amazon for pre-order.
Oh, awesome.
No pressure.
All the pressure. Get on it.
It is, yeah, pre-order is important from what I've heard with publishing companies. Usually they look for how many you can sell within the first couple weeks to give you another contract.
Yeah.
That's what I've heard, at least. I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, and I think sort of for first-time writers like myself, was nobody's heard of us. It's sort of a really good way to get out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'll have a link in the show notes to that. Also, so if you're listening, click that link, pre-order. Awesome. Thanks for coming on. Mouse, you're up.
Yes. All right. So I'm yelling into the mic. I hope this is loud enough.
Do it. You're good.
Okay. Yeah. So I got into the culture at a very young age. I guess middle school or high school. MTV was on, and I always grew up with music in my house. So I was always looking for music videos. I followed Depeche Mode and The Cure and Susie, and I'd run home after school just to watch these music videos, and I got to learn what was considered alternative, as opposed to what everybody else was listening to, which was mainstream music, popular music. So I mean, that's like as long as I could remember, I was into that kind of music. And then there were record stores, and I was buying cassette tapes and had my Walkman and all of that stuff. So that's when I started to get into Bauhaus, and I would collect like a lot of old German dark wave. So I started with the dark wave, synth pop, a lot of music that you'd find on like Project Records, Cleopatra, and all of that. And I just started hoarding music. And because I was the person who would share music with other people, I ended up just becoming a DJ, because that's what I do all the time. Like, I just speak in music, so I will just make people music instead of explaining things, because that's easier for me. So I guess as far as projects, I have two projects. There is Communion After Dark, where it's a weekly podcast where we spin all the new dark electro, industrial, EBM, gothic, synth pop music, you name it. We tried to capture a little bit of all of it, but it's more on the harder, dancier side. And you can find us on iTunes, Mixcloud, YouTube, and all of that. I also have Obscura Undead, which I do with DJ Azzy. She's been on the show before. And we are a music community, mostly centered around the Tampa, Florida area and other cities within Florida. And we try to get people excited about obscure music that you usually can't hear in nightclubs or anywhere else. So we're all over Bandcamp, Spotify, finding small bands from South America or just other niche places that you would never ever hear. A lot of music out of Poland, Ukraine, stuff like that.
Fantastic. Links in the show notes for that as well. Mouse, thanks for hanging out again.
Thanks for having me again.
All right, Mike.
Well, from what I'm catching so far, I'm significantly older than everyone else here. So that makes for an interesting start to my story. And growing up, I tended to always connect to whatever the alternative was at the time, whether it was the hippies or, the punk, whatever. But it was definitely right after college, or during college for that matter, when MTV was really starting up and I was just devouring all these videos. And I suddenly found a real connection to the new wave, to the punk, to the goth. Fresh out of college, I had my own record store for a couple of years where I was able to order for myself a lot of these obscure artists that would later become much better known, but a lot of the bands from Britain and things like that. And it just grew and grew. And inadvertently, I started playing in a band that was a new wave cover band. And I remember years later, when I started playing with another friend of mine, she was like, "Yeah, I remember seeing you at your very first show. You were absolutely horrible."
Wow.
But
Wow.
yeah, it was brutal, but it was honest. But the thing was, we played all the time, and I began to play all the time. And it just, I think the dark elements of goth had always appealed to me throughout my life, whether it was watching the Universal Monster movies or the Addams Family or making model bats and, just all this type of thing was always in there somewhere. And finally, it had a way to be realized. So at this point, I'm playing in, I think I'm an official member of about 5 different bands. So the main band is Ego Likeness, and you can see videos, pull down recordings, order the CDs. I've been with them for 10 years, and that's opened the door to doing a lot more. Also play with Spider Lilies. Recently started playing with Angel Metro and Stoneburner. I have a local post-punk group, and I've played shows with Rain Within, Interface, Fires, and I'm always open to helping other groups out. So I really dove into this full on, and yeah, that's my life now.
And a wonderful life it is.
Yes.
Thanks for hanging out, Mike. Yeah. And finally, the sinner, my goth sister, Zachary.
Hi. Hello, bitches. Buckle up. So I actually got into goth, maybe 14, 15 years ago through this random encounter on MySpace. And it was like the first person who ever added me, also a Black goth. And they just flooded me with information, like movies I had to watch to be their friend and like all this stuff. And it turned out that I really loved everything about it. It was like weird vampire Eastern European films that like no one had ever heard of, like weird shit. And ever since then, I was like, I tried really hard to be normal as I was going through high school. Couldn't do it. The only thing that made me happy was being strange, being goth. And now what I work on, I'm working on some weird shit, obviously, that I'm still figuring out. But the main thing is living the strange life. And that the best place to find that would be through my Instagram, The Strange Goth.
Thanks for coming on again. Always a pleasure to have you. All right, so let's get into it. Well, first of all, I'll say I'm really glad that we have such a diverse range of age and experience and like location of where you're from, because I think that's going to help to give us a more of a mosaic view of the variety of our culture. And I guess the first place to start, and probably the obvious but important question that we'll be unpacking through the episode is whether or not goth has been a place for you to escape from mainstream power structures, or if you've found that it has been a place that's reinforced some of the problems that we have with the broader system, whether that's through willful action or complacency, or if there's more than likely a combination of those two.
What I've found is in my community here in Charlottesville, there's been a lot of acceptance, and I have never had any problems becoming a part of the scene, being in it, joining these different bands. I almost feel like a certain amount of that I have a privilege in being a musician that allows me to get around some of the prejudice or things like that. But I also think this community in itself has been good for supporting diverse members in it, including our goth night has never been strictly goth. It's like whatever the alternative. And anybody can come in, and everyone loves the live music. Everyone's cheering. Everyone's calling for encores. And it's a family type unit. And this became very important 2 years ago because I don't know if you recognize the name Charlottesville, but yeah.
Hopefully we all do, yeah.
That was a thing. And the thing about it is that goth family, a lot of those people ended up being on the front lines. A lot of those people ended up being out there doing medical help. Everyone was involved in fighting off the racism. So the experience locally has definitely been one of support. And my privilege as I go out into the world playing in these bands that travel cross country for the last 10 years, I'm recognized, so that gives me a certain free pass, it seems. I don't catch any problems myself. I know they're out there. And the flip side to traveling the country, especially since the present administration has been in, is that we will land some places. I remember one place in particular where there was this bar kind of in a strip mall. We go in the daytime to set up, to get all ready. The day crowd turned and looked, and I'm already on guard these days, and I felt it. This was not just, oh, look at those goth kids coming in. There was something more. And I pointed this out to the others, and they're like, oh, no, it's just because we're goth. Don't worry about it. So we set up, we sound check. I go away for a little bit. I come back. One of the members of the band is sitting there chatting with some guy. I'm like, I'm going to sit in the van. I'm just more comfortable there. 5 minutes later, he runs up to me and says, don't go anywhere without us. I didn't catch this at first. I'm sitting there talking to this guy. He crossed his legs. I saw a tattoo of a swastika and a tattoo of an SS. Jesus. Now, of course, once the crowd shifted at nighttime, the goth family was there again. But traveling like this has become a concern. It used to be that in many of these cities, I would feel comfortable just, sound check's over. I'm going to wander down the street to the store. Not anymore. The radar's on and I don't feel safe anymore. But that is not within our community. That's still what I'm running into outside of it and doing these things within the community. Yeah, I haven't had any problems. So that's been my experience.
So I've noticed in the last 10, if you count all the things I've read and watched, 20 years, is that because goth in every medium is not explicitly pro-Black or highlights people of color in those mediums, people just assume that it's well, of course, everyone's welcome. And people now coming into it with the Killstar generation are bringing those attitudes with them of only these people, this is what it's supposed to look like, building off of brands that don't feature African-American people or people of color. And so you're seeing this weird thing where it's because it's never been stated, now we actually have to state it and now we have to address it. And it's such a weird time to be in.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I was thinking about the word escape, and I never thought of it as an escape from mainstream culture is rather something that's pushing up against it or something that's resisting it. I mean, to me, being Black in America in and of itself is sort of a state of resistance, is already pushing up against mainstream culture as is. So being Goth, I never really saw it as a means of escaping that, but as a means of kind of doubling down on my resistance, I guess. I always sort of, I mean,
definitely.
So, I mean, I think one of the things I think is sort of interesting about, oh my.
Sorry.
Is everyone okay?
Resistance!
One of the Goth decorations just fell from the wall. I don't know why.
It's that haunted doll coming back to get you.
Resist! Resist! I mean, when I was a kid and kind of growing up, I wasn't really old enough to go to clubs. I mean, the most, when I was most into this, it was, 13, 14, 15 or whatever. But because I was in a majority Black city, because I went to a school that was majority Black, or very diverse, I should say. I went to this little tiny Quaker school that was really diverse. Because my experience in Blackness was kind of all encompassing, it wasn't particularly interesting that I was a weird goth arty farty chick in Black, because there were all sorts of different kinds of Black people. There were nerdy Black people, and there were sporty Black people, and there were bougie Black people. So my Blackness never really felt like an issue in terms of my gothness. My gothness was just a personal expression of who I happened to be. And it wasn't until I went to college, we moved to Ohio, and I was in a much more segregated world. Like the college I went to I was the only Black person in my entire program. It was only then that I started feeling the real kind of everyday anxiety of being so marginalized. But it didn't have anything to do with gothness. I never really felt any of that kind of pressure, in my life personally, because
And that's interesting you say that, because in listening to you talk, I realized, just like you, when I feel marginalized, it's not because of what I'm wearing or how many piercings I have. Those things have just disappeared into who I am. It's the racial aspects of it.
Yeah.
That's where I feel whatever pressure there is out there. But as far as how I present myself, I don't think twice about that anymore. I don't feel that that's an issue.
I have a question after Mouse speaks.
Okay, I'll jump right into mine. Yeah, for me, it is definitely goth culture is an escape from the mainstream, but I wouldn't really word it like that because I've never considered myself any part of the mainstream. It's so if goth culture is my center, when I interact with other people and they see a difference between me and them, the first thing they see is that I'm an alternative person. In my eyes, that's what I think it is. They're seeing that I'm dressed in Black, I've got dark makeup on, and that's the first thing that shocks them. And I've never really had a problem with my skin color, knock on wood, and I hope that's the correct perception, because the people in my inner circle will never tell me to my face that the problem is because of my skin color. I've never had anyone who's even an acquaintance or sharing a room with me ever tell me that it's because of my skin color. And I've never gotten that impression. I've always gotten the impression that I've been marginalized because I'm female and I'm chasing a dream. Like, say I'm doing DJing, the people around me are male. The big difference is that I'm female. So I don't consider the race being the issue. And when it comes to the mainstream itself, which I'm never part of, I don't listen to any of the mainstream music. I don't know what's going on in, the newsstands or any of that. Well, I know the newsstands. I just mean like I don't know what the top best-selling book is right now and what main conversations are. In that mainstream world, that's where the bigotry and the sexism is in America. And that's why I feel like we don't see those things in the goth culture. It's the mainstream. We go to the goth culture it's almost like we've created this goth culture as outsiders to be in a safe space. And I hope that sexism, racism, and all of that isn't accepted anywhere in the goth scene. And as far as I've seen, my immediate area, I don't have that problem, but I have seen online the abuse of, you've got people of color everywhere that are just getting slammed for what they're wearing, how they're doing their makeup, how they're doing their cosplay. And I think that we would like to think the people who are saying these things are not part of the goth scene, but I don't know if it's true. I think, just to go back a little bit, I have been in the goth scene the alternative scene at a young age. And one of the things that I feel I'm good at is I could walk into a room of middle-aged white men and they'll all stare at me and I'll be very different. But, give me some time, and by the end of the night, we're all laughing with each other. I found some kind of common ground, and we'll pull all of that together and we'll be friends. But I don't let my color stand in the way, and I don't think about it at all. And that's how I end up becoming friends with people. And by the way, for the record, I am the only person in my scene of color. There are some Latinos, which I'm friends with, just a few. But I am the only Black person that I know of within the Tampa goth scene.
So recently, in like the last few years, I am a mixed person of color. My family is not originally from here. I don't identify as African American. I'm Caribbean American.
Yeah, me too.
Yay, Trinidad.
Yeah.
You're Trinidadian?
Yes.
Oh my God, wait, I think I commented on this, didn't I?
I don't know.
No, well, I'm very happy now, and my heart just did a thing. So, hang on. I gotta focus. We'll return to this in a minute. So being a Trinidadian, growing up in America, there was so much pressure to adhere to what Black people were supposed to do that ultimately, like, I was never accepted by the African American community. I was always othered, and then white people, it's like, well, you're supposed to be with African Americans, and then it's just an endless cycle of being culturally homeless. And then with goth, I was allowed to like define myself really and truly, figure out who I wanted to be, get to express that. I talk about depression and anxiety and suicide a lot. And I've been shown like a lot of freedom. Like, I don't have people telling me like, well, fuck your feelings or be stronger. It's like, people respect what I do. So my question is, in your experiences in America as a person of color who is goth, do you feel like they're two separate experiences that you're forced to endure at the same time? Or are they like, they overlap so much that it just becomes one and the same?
I mean, I would say I would probably get more criticism or more side eye or more whatever from other Black people than white people.
I get that.
Being alternative. Yeah. Like, I think there's a more pressure to I think there's a lot of this sort of respectability bullshit politic thing. And I think there's more desire to conform, a more desire to project a certain kind of quote unquote Blackness, however it is that you want to define that.
Can I ask you a question?
That comes internally from, yeah.
Oh, I was going to ask, seeing how the African American community like is banding together with that level of intensity, like together we're stronger, do you think there's pressure to assimilate to this stereotypical or readily accessible, visible idea of being Black, so that way we're stronger together? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes, and I think this is a battle that's been going on for forever. That there's so basically these two. I mean, this is going back to like W.E.B. Boys versus Booker T. Washington.
Okay.
There's this attitude that in order to get by, no, really, there's this attitude that in order to succeed, in order to advance as a Black person in the country, you have to assimilate and you have to compromise and you have to kind of go with the flow, and then white people will eventually accept you because you've kind of
Yeah.
towed the line, versus the idea of no, you have to kind of fight for what you want and you have to go against that. And it isn't about assimilating, it's about sort of being yourself and owning that, and that being your strength. So I think there is this constant play against I keep using quote fingers, but a quote authentic Blackness that is supposed to kind of represent everyone and uplift the race and not, versus your own subjectivity and your own individuality that represents you and who you are as an individual. And the more we have this concept of one person represents all, the worse we are for it. Because then we just become so the more we just become one marginalized object that can be easily predicted, easily controlled, easily defined. I think that's this battle that's been going on in this country from the start.
And it's interesting because it's wonderful to hear these words, because that's a battle that I've had to fight for a long time. As a kid, the civil rights movement was going on. And the fight to me at that point was equality. Make it so that I can do whatever I want to do, equal to anybody else doing whatever they want to do, whatever they want to be. So I come out and I say, I'm a goth. And like you said, the side eye comes from the other Blacks.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, wait a minute, you are now going to tell me that I can't do this?
Mm-hmm.
These people fought for my right to do whatever I wanted to do. And you're saying, no, now you can't anymore. Now we go back and segregate ourselves. And that, I feel myself getting heated up just talking about it.
I know, me too. I know.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm with you. I'm totally with you.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. It's like, the point was, I can do this. I can be who I want to be, realize the kind of life I want to realize, and not have anybody of any color tell me, no, you can't.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Like, I'm at the place mentally, because I think I'm the youngest in the room. I'm at the place where I'm just like out of fucks to give about trying to tailor myself to be more acceptable to fucking anybody, because I can't win. And like recently I've just started to be like, this is who I am. This is what I'm about. I'm a fighty person. I've got a lot of passion. And I've had more and more people, like young people like me, come up, like when I'm at a club or something, and tell me seeing me do my thing makes them want to do their thing.
Yeah.
And like, I'm in tears at the end of the night. Like, holy fuck, that's all I've ever wanted to do with my life.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. It's just like, as a drummer, I'm sitting at a merch booth one day at one of these conventions, and a young white fellow walks up to me, who I don't know, never seen before, as far as I know, and he says, watching you drum made me want to start drumming. I'm like, just, this goes beyond all racial identity situations. This was just person to person. I have influenced somebody else just by being me with confidence.
Yes.
Which is what it comes down to. And
and the confidence is the key, because I feel like people might be looking at us to fail, but
I get
and it's subconscious in us. I'm kind of assuming we're all going through the same thing, but I have to work twice as hard as anybody to get recognized as an equal. But I'm so ingrained and used to that I just overachieve at everything.
Yeah.
I accomplish everything that I achieve, and I make it look easy, but I work twice as hard all the time. I do not sleep. I do not rest.
Yeah.
And I am a leader, not a follower. And then people are like, wow, you inspire me. And I'm like, well, I kind of had to do this.
Right.
I was forced to.
This is how we
There was
survive.
no door for me. There was no door for me. I made that door.
But you know what?
I made a ton.
But you know what? It's
fucking
also
house.
how we survive. It's also how we survive, but it's also why we have higher blood pressure. There's this there's the end of, oh God, I'm going to forget it. It's a show on HBO called, oh God, I'm going to say United States of Flyness or something like that. And
Insecure.
No, it's not Insecure.
Or something?
It's, it was the end of the season, and I'm looking it up right now as I'm talking. And there's this woman, this Black woman, who's just sort of whispering into the camera, saying things like, you deserve rest, you deserve whimsy, you deserve foolishness, you deserve, mistakes, you deserve, and a lot of it was rest. And there's, I keep calling this the privilege of frivolity. And there's this idea that if you're white, that you kind of have, you're allowed to be weird. You're allowed to be different. You're allowed to act foolish or weird or crazy or strange in public. And that's something that you're kind of allowed to do. And as a Black person in this country, there's this, the
slightest mistake can get you fucking killed.
Yeah. Yeah. It's this veneer of cool, this veneer of of seriousness, of constant vigilance, which is true and accurate and real, but at the same time, it's dehumanizing. We've earned the right to rest and chill and look stupid every now and then and have it be okay and not have it be life threatening.
Or end up on like CBS.
And often.
For like
exactly.
getting kicked off a train for laughing too loud or some shit. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Oh, we're gonna have fun.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
I love your TED
Talk. Well to control.
So I had a few questions I wanted to ask real quick, if I might.
Yeah.
I know you all had mentioned, or at least a few of you had mentioned, this existence of having to experience existing in multiple different worlds. And I think you mentioned 2 worlds specifically, and I'm wondering wouldn't it be more almost 3 worlds in that you're having to navigate, your Black community, you're having to navigate the quote unquote mainstream white community, and then also having to navigate the Goth community. Now, I know, Mouse, you said your navigation of the Goth community has not been terribly fraught. But
right, and I don't have any exposure to other Blacks in my environment at all.
Okay, so you exist pretty much exclusively, at least as far as the Tampa scene is concerned, in the mainstream white community / the Tampa Goth community. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So that would, I think, make you the exception of everyone here, because I think everyone else has mentioned at least having some involvement within a mainstream Black community, having to exist in a mainstream white community, and then also existing within a Goth community, not always as comfortably as might be desired. So I just wanted to get some ideas about that, and then also the mention of the stress between the Washington Du Bois, dichotomy of pridefully being out Black and proud and trying to assimilate with the mainstream culture to get that acceptance, which I think was also reflected a little bit later in the MLK Malcolm X philosophies of how to address civil rights. So any comments on that, those concepts and ideas there?
Well, I think for me, I don't feel like I'm quote unquote navigating the Goth community to that degree anymore. It's just like when I went to Dark Side of the Con a couple of weekends ago, it felt like a big family reunion with all the bands, with all the fans. Everything was comfortable. Everything was relaxed. It just felt natural for where I am now. Again, like I said, it could be because of the privilege of being a very visible musician. having my own brand basically from playing in so many different bands. And that might shield me from some problems that could potentially go on. But I didn't feel that that was one of the things I needed to navigate. It's more when you're in the quote unquote real world with your real job, and I'm dealing with anybody and everybody wearing black, wearing the piercings once again, outside of the goth community. Then I'm navigating. Then I'm judging or trying to be aware of how the other person might be looking at me. But within the goth community itself, I also haven't had any problems come up where I've had to really sit back and think about it.
So you have generally found the goth community to be a bit more of a safe space away from the judgment and
definitely
just all that comes in the outside mainstream world. Yeah. Okay, good.
Oh, yeah. I just wanted to mention that the show I was talking about is called Random Acts of Flyness. I was trying to remember the name. That's it.
In terms of like navigating multiple worlds, not just the two, like I'm still trying to let go of the pressure to be absolutely perfect, because like when I was trying to assimilate and like pull my hair back and straighten my hair and like wear less makeup and wear normal clothes, like I was really good at it. I was good at convincing like middle class white youth that like I'm just like you. I like all the same things you do. And it was like dying. And now like that was in Silicon Valley. And now in LA, the more that I am myself, the more success I feel that I'm getting. Like I'm just happier in my life. But there are moments where like people are praising me for being strong or being cool or whatever. And I realize they don't understand a lot of what I do comes from pain or trauma. That certain things, it's like no one else can help me figure out where my line between my blackness and my survival tactics are. And I kind of just have to be like weird to everybody for a second to remember like this is who I am and this is who I have to be to get my paycheck to be successful on that level.
You have to be loud to be heard.
Yeah. I'm the TARDIS of sound. Like I'm super loud.
Not like sound loud, but I mean, everything loud.
Yeah, I get it.
You dress loud. You know.
But I'm also,
right back to you have to try harder. You have to do everything bigger and better.
Yeah, I'm 5'2", so I've had to wear I wear platform heels for everything. I'm always putting something on my head, so I just like look bigger, just so I can even like get to the bar without having to get like.
Are you my doppelganger, like on the other side of the
Probably,
country?
like, what's up, sis?
You might be, because I'm also 5'2". Yeah. Same story.
You understand the pain.
Let's move on here. I don't necessarily want to let goth off the hook yet. I know there was some discussion about goth being a place, a safe place. But I think there are probably still some issues that we can discuss here. And I think the two main areas I came up with were music and then media. So let's just start with music. We've got some musicians here. When we're looking at goth and industrial spaces, clubs, conventions, concerts, so on, are we seeing promoters or venue owners or even just the goths that are there in general being inclusive in their booking? So women, people of color, trans people, queer people, indigenous people, so on. Do we see that our community is making that effort, or are they still viewed as a token act to kind of meet an appearance on the bill?
I have feelings about this. One of the things.
Preach.
So
share.
There are very, very few promoters in LA who actively are inclusive, where they follow everybody who relates to the goth scene in some way, whether it's a model, musician, artist, clothing designer, what have you. And there's a lot more promoters that I've seen where it's only when they need a person of color, or they're worried they're going to get under like some heat for it, that they start reaching out, and they pick anybody, missing people who have been in the scene for 10, 20 years. And it's just like, well, any Black person will do. Any dark, like the darker the better, because then we look inclusive. And it's really hard to have that conversation with people without people immediately leaping in to be like, well, I'm not like that. I created a safe space, without even listening to what a safe space is.
It's interesting because what I've seen on the East Coast up and down has been more more inclusiveness, more thought put behind these things. For instance, one of the things that we looked at, again, I keep mentioning Dark Side because it seems to be a good example of a lot of things that go right. About a third of the bands were female fronted, and that was really nice to see. Instead of a lot of industrial goth, it was just all guys, just a whole sausage party going on. You had that diversity happening. And again, with the promoters, I have never seen them treat me differently as a Black performer. And they are very knowledgeable of who's in their area that they can bring in. And that's something I could probably look at closer. And maybe I'm making an assumption here, but just in what I've seen, everything, especially because a number of the musicians I know in the goth scene, they're Black musicians, there are Latino musicians, just a wide variety that's coming out and now hooking into the scene and doing this. And I see that representation happening in these conventions and things like that on the East Coast. So
there is a huge presence of Latinx performers in the post-punk and goth genre right now.
Yes, and females as well.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
Huge increase of female dark wave.
Oh yeah,
post-punk.
Yep.
So I've seen this with as it relates to women, but not necessarily Blacks or people of color in the scene. Coming from the DJ aspect of it, when I came on the scene DJing, I was just trying to make my name without flaunting that I was a woman. And there were other female DJs out there. And first and foremost, you would know that they're a woman. You'd see them on the flyer, probably their whole body or in some kind of provocative position, and they're all very pretty and all of that. And I really didn't want to do that. So, I had a lot of trouble trying to get gigs, and I ended up, working twice as hard, making sure that I was excellent at everything so that I would get even any credit at all. I wanted to be good at what I did so that I would be known for how well I DJ or my musical tastes or my song selection. I don't want to be recognized as a woman. So I don't even want to go by my first name, Sherry. I want people to call me Mouse, and I want people to follow me online without even knowing what gender I am. I don't want that to be what feeds people into, becoming my followers. And then you have other promoters only in West Palm Beach. We have Frankie Morales over at Respectable's Street Cafe over there. That's a club. And he's constantly finding female DJs to come and spin. And he showcases that. And I think that's a beautiful thing. But coming from Tampa, I was in Sarasota, even Orlando, you won't see female DJs. So I had to work hard to create my own gigs. I would, rent out spaces and just play. And I had female DJ friends. I have at least like 3 female DJ friends who never get a chance to play anywhere. So I would get a venue, get a party going, and have them play. And that's the only way. Like I'm probably the only one I can think of that empowers women to get opportunities DJing.
I was also thinking as you were talking that one of the things that has helped this area, especially in the Virginia, DC, Richmond, all of that, is that the promoters are female. It's not your usual male promoter who's going to have those prejudices, but we actually have female promoters who are strong and know what they're doing and have the backbone to back it up. And, when they find a band that's been a problem, especially there have been problematic situations in the goth scene with people appearing in blackface or inappropriate comments, that kind of thing. And they've shut it down. They've said, guess what? You're not playing this bar anymore.
Yeah.
You're not coming here.
Are there?
And that's great. They don't buckle under that.
Yeah. So it.
Joe, Zach, I think I heard you asking about that. This is probably who you're referring to. Joe Letts
yes.
of Combi Christ.
Fucking what?
Did a.
I didn't know there were goth people doing blackface. I thought it was just like some random. Hang on, I'm googling it.
I've never heard of it either, but if anybody did it, it would have been Combi Christ.
Wow.
So I get a normal human job.
Yeah, but there are places they don't get booked.
Well, fuck yeah, they don't get booked.
No, the thing is...
Well, they're in the metal scene
Holy
now.
shit!
How? Yeah, the thing is, whenever you have any large group, you're going to have stupid humans who are going to do incredibly stupid things.
Where is it? Send me the link.
Hang on. I'll send it to you. Holy shit!
So, So Joe Letts has recently left Combi Christ, and now he's with Aesthetic Perfection.
Are you serious?
Yes.
No. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. He's touring with them now.
Oh, fuck that. Fuck that noise so hard. I'm so upset. Hang on, I got a drink.
Wow.
I'm going to make a lot of inhuman sounds now. I'm sorry.
I have tough skin when it comes to this. I mean, I'm not gonna be like, okay, I don't support this band anymore. I would just, I grimace and all of that. And I mean, if I saw him, I'd say something to his face. But
well, that becomes an interesting question, though. That
it does.
Can you separate the artist from the art?
Oh,
Can you say, I'm going to support this band even though you made this decision to hire this guy?
No.
That's
as one of your members.
Whole other can of worms, because there are bands that I love. I love the way their music is, and then all of a sudden, the lead goes and does something stupid, and has tons of people blasting him online, roasting him. If you get a burn notice, am I supposed to, as a DJ or promoter sharing music, am I supposed to say, okay, now I turn my back on this band?
I have a question then. My thing is, especially with artists and how art is so intimate to goth, how can you love someone that much to give them your hard-earned money when they don't give a fuck about what happens to you? And then they're in a position of influence. So imagine who they're drawing to their shows when they do these things. And then obviously they're not preaching tolerance or anything. They're like, yeah, these people are like this, whatever. And then it becomes an unsafe place, maybe not for us individually, but for younger people who might find themselves in dangerous situations. And unfortunately, that's the time we're in. Hopefully 10, 15, 20, 100 years from now, it's not like that. And people can do this. And it's like, well, okay, but the other band members didn't do shit. But right now, it's not like that.
Well, I think it also signals to groups that are looking to infiltrate subcultures with white nationalist views that people can do these things and get away with it and still be allowed in the scene. And that's when we get, the goth right hashtags or the Nazi uniform fetishization and stuff like that. And it's it's kind of like saying, hey, we accept this kind of stuff here, so why don't you try and sneak it in, kind of thing. And I don't think when we have so many artists and people creating things in the scene that aren't doing that, it's like, yeah, let's support them and give them a platform and cut out any of this other stuff that can leave room for marginalizing people that are already marginalized.
Yeah, and I've always thought that I've always thought that argument of sort of supporting the art or separating the art from the artist it's lazy. It's pure laziness and trying to have your cake and eat it too. And I completely agree that whatever personal feelings that you might have, still love Morrissey music, but I fucking I can't stand him now.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to go to his shows. I'm not going to link to his stuff. I'm not going to promote him anymore. I'm not going to go out and talk about how much I used to love him anymore.
Hang on.
I guess I'm just am now.
Would you support a
yeah.
Morrissey tribute band though?
Yes, there's a great band called Mexercy that it's a Mexican Morrissey Smith tribute band, and they do everything in Spanish. And it's it's like the Smiths as
Daniel,
a mariachi
link
band.
it, the count.
It was so much fun. The show was
really cool.
so
I
much
like
fun. Yeah. But yeah, no, I think that this idea that you can sort of the luxury of being able to say, that I appreciate the artist and the art means so much to me. The only people who can say that are the people who aren't affected by the damage that person is doing.
Love the song, hate the singer.
Yeah.
Which is bullshit.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a fun way to say. Yeah.
And, one of the things about it that was kind of touched on is the influence that a person up on stage has. And it goes back to what you were saying about having to do it twice as hard, having to put the best face on more so than ever before. And for those of us who are entertaining people, we are an influence. They are listening to our lyrics. They are paying attention to what we do. We have to present, or I have to present, a really good, solid face to them that's positive, that's productive. And I don't think these people like Jolette's look at the kind of effect they have down the line. At best, he's incredibly stupid with doing this stuff. At worst, he's all right. But, at best, he's stupid and not thinking about how this affects other people.
Yeah.
And how people are going to follow his example and say, oh, yeah, it's cool to do this. It's okay to do this.
So, I mean, here's my thought on this specifically. Alex from We Have a Technical mentioned on a recent show that he hasn't seen more people of color in the scene today than when he started like 20 years ago. And that's very disturbing to him. And I think that should be disturbing to all of us. I'm glad to hear that there are some scenes that are booking women and people of color and doing the work. But it's, maybe it's a bit contextual. It reminded me of this quote from Michelle Norris, who does the Race Card Project. She said, "America is the land of the free and the home of amnesia." And I get a lot of messages. I get a lot of Facebook messages and emails from people across America mostly, but around other countries as well, through the podcast, talking about how they're in a scene that's run by it's either a smaller scene, sometimes bigger scenes. Andy Harriman talked about New York on the misogyny episode, but mentioning that their scene is run by a white male DJ and that they make zero effort to be inclusive. And this is like a serious problem, because when you build a scene that looks like you, then you're implicitly saying that scene is not for people who don't look like you. And that plays like right into those cultural systems that are built to block out people of color. And, our America itself was basically meant to be a place for white people to have power. So if you are one of those people, like, you are creating a problem and saying that, oh, well, I only know DJs or bands who are white. Like, that's not an excuse anymore. We have to do better than that. And the fact that these scenes still exist, I think, is a problem.
I mean, one thing I wonder about, because I mean, honestly, I don't really go out to clubs much anymore. But the thing that really breaks my heart is this discourse online. Because these, Black kids who, maybe there aren't clubs where the town they're at, maybe they don't know any other goth folks or whatever, and the way that they connect with people is online, and the way they connect with other goth kids and other black goth kids or whoever is online, and that is a community and that is a scene. So having, I just see these people post things like, goth is white and goth is only for white people, and black people look stupid as goth. I mean, I feel like, to me, that's what I see more that angers me and breaks my heart so much is this racist discourse online, since I'm not.
That's why I really love the Afro-punk movement and connecting into that scene, because flies in the opposite direction of all of that. It's like, we're here, look at us.
I will say, you mentioned Afropunk. I'm gonna have to look this up, but Kyle just shared a article today, and I'll just link this for you guys to check out, because I skimmed it like right before the show. But the headline was Afropunk harmed way more people than previously reported. Staff and community speaks out.
Oh no!
Yeah.
So I don't know what's going on. I'll put that in the chat. I don't know
There's
what's
a lot
going
of
on
controversy about
I have a
Afropunk
comment.
and what they've become.
Is there? Well, I haven't looked at this. I mean, I've come across Afropunk and afro-goth a few times online. Didn't look heavily into it because, as like Zachary was saying, like a Caribbean black is not African American. They're Caribbean American. So I don't really identify with the African goth scene. I think it's really cool. But one of the things that I have a problem with, and this may be a very unpopular opinion, and I apologize, but I think that if you have a place that is so specifically Afro-goth, you'll have people thinking that it's separate from goth. You'll have people saying, okay, you're not goth, you're Afro-goth, and then dismissing it like that. So instead of it being like a cool little part of the goth community, it's become outside of the goth community as a living entity.
I think Cholo goth kind of became that.
Yeah, I think so. But it's like, you can look at it and you could say, okay, well, that's not goth. That's Cholo goth. It's just a name that has been tacked on to the end. And in today's like online world, you have a lot of mainstream cliques that are confused, and they're almost like appropriating goth things because everybody wants to look cool, don't they? So, okay, we're going to wear black, we're SoundCloud rappers, and we're going to just attach the name goth to it, and they can go do whatever they want, but we all know that's not really part of the goth scene.
I mean, I actually have a question about that, because I think one of the questions that you had in your outline was talking about the term Afro-goth. And I guess for me, I see it less of a specific scene, as I equate it with Afrofuturism, honestly. I mean, to me, the way I think of it and the way I think of that term is a way of looking at goth, or the gothic, because I talk a lot more about the gothic than I do goth, from a lens that's not Eurocentric, or for a lens that's not white centric. So I guess I just don't think of it as a separate scene so much as a different perspective. But I may be naive in that. I may, I may be, there may be people who like do think what you're saying, that like, oh, that's just a separate little subset of something. Whereas the way the way I've been thinking about it in my own head is that it's a way of thinking about goth culture that's not British, that's not European, that's coming from your own experiences, whether they be African American or Caribbean or anyone from the diaspora. Because I don't think it's just black African Americans, as in descendants of slavery. I think it's anyone in the sort of Afro-Caribbean diaspora that I'm kind of referring to.
Yeah, no, I would think that Afro-goth would be more than just happening to be black and also being goth. It's incorporating some of the, whatever your personal, based on your diaspora heritage is, you're invoking some of that cultural element into your goth aesthetic.
Right. Yeah. It's got to have that like tribal inspiration to it, I think.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Zachary.
Okay, so going back to what the Count said about not seeing a lot of Black Goths in clubs, um, I've been in LA for 3-ish years, going on 4, something like that. And I started vending my art in clubs like pretty much as soon as I moved here. And when I first started going, there were not a lot of Black Goths. There were not a lot of Goths of color. And I'm not saying like I'm amazing and I inspired people to come out, but it was like I'm very sensitive to how my relationships with people can lead other people to make decisions. Like if I go to Bar Sinister, which is a very inclusive place, um, I know that other people are going to be like, well, they gave her a spot. She gets to be here and is like, she's not a customer. She's a vendor. She's being brought into that level of this place. And that's going to mean something to people who are like, yeah, my friend could come here and feel safe. And so I've seen like in the last 3-4 years, I've definitely seen a huge increase in Goths of color coming out. Like it blows my mind. There was one night that we were all looking at each other like, where did all these Goths of color come from? Like who put out a flyer? Like what's going on, guys? And it was just amazing. And then there was something else. Oh, the afro-goth thing. I don't like it. Mostly because when I like 8-9 years ago when I did 5 Questionable Goths, like a collaboration channel with 5 people, there were a lot of people asking me, why don't you make it all Black Goths? Why don't you just focus on these people? Because that's what people need. There's no Black, it's Black Friday, for example. There's no one that high up in the goth scene who is a person of color. And I was like, I can't do it because it implies that there is a difference in the experience of being a goth that warrants such a thing. And then it would like, you would have white goths not getting any perspective or any insight into the perspective of Black goths. And I don't think that's correct. Like you need it to be goth so everyone can see what everyone else is going through.
Yeah, that's the power of diversity. We don't want ghettoization within the culture. We want people to be interacting and seeing those, diverse experiences, those diverse interpretations of things. And as you were talking about the LA scene, I think that's a testament to the power of representation.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. It's very hard to be the only person of color or the only person of whatever makes you stand out. That is a act of courage to be that person. But once that person exists, it is easier for other similar people to go, oh, I can go in there and I can do that and I can join.
There was someone who came up to me like a few months ago and told me that the reason they got into vending, it was like a younger Black goth, was because they saw me doing it. And I was just like, that's exactly why I have to be here and just be so aware of how I'm being represented.
So that was one of the things I wanted to talk about is representation in our subcultural media, because I am a firm believer that as a culture and as individuals, a lot of the way that we see ourselves are based around the stories that we tell ourselves, and the stories that we tell ourselves are often driven by media, film, TV, other dominant imagery. And in mainstream culture, that's largely driven by a preference for white cis people. They're the hero, they're the standard, they're the default, basically. And yeah, and when we, as we live our lives, and that's our background story, our identities start to reflect those ideals, because those ideals are coded into that media. And this, that's, at least in my view, partly why when you look at something like the doll test and you ask kids, to look at a white doll and a black doll, they'll assign positive attributes to the white doll and negative attributes to the black doll, regardless. I think the study showed that whether they were white or black, the kids themselves. So when we look at our own subcultural media, magazines, music videos, somebody brought up clothing companies, event flyers, websites, all of that kind of thing. What are you seeing represented there?
Well, online, I guess it was mentioned the Killstar generation, right? You have like your Instagram goth, and that kind of goth has become very in your face, visual. There's a certain recognizable look to it, you know, the new goth and everything.
Common.
And they're all pale, porcelain, beautiful skinned young women, aren't they? You know, sometimes you have men, sometimes you might have a black person, but the majority of the time, 99.5% of the time, you have, you know, these girls, they're pale and they're thin. So if you're not thin and you're not pale, the people who are young and impressionable and don't know any better, they will think that you are not goth. So I think that's a misconception out there that we need to break. And they probably don't realize what reality is like until they get a little bit older and start frequenting clubs and making friends and all of that. But, you know, most of these kids are like young and their entire universe is Instagram. Yeah. They don't know anything else.
It's weird to see that, like, especially the young girls who are taking these photos and being posted and going viral and all that, they don't know that that's what they're contributing to. So it's like, it's so hard for me to figure out where the line is for faulting them when they're just doing it to be cute. And it's like, that's totally valid. Have a good time. That's what we're here for. That's what got this. But it's also like, you're getting more for less than anybody else who is different from you in the slightest way. And that makes people feel bad, and then we can't have the discussion.
Are there any black?
I'm actually,
I'm
actually looking at the website right now.
I'm looking at the page
not,
right now.
There isn't a single. Yeah,
we're all on the website.
I'm looking
nothing.
at women's dresses.
Nothing.
No, I'm seeing a black girl
on the homepage.
I'm seeing a black girl
there's
right
a black
on the cover.
model on the homepage, but if you look at like where the models are or the dresses, there isn't a single black person.
There's not a single guy
in the dresses.
I believe
Bad.
Dolls Kill tried.
Well, you have to go to the guys section.
Yeah, I'm looking at the guys section, and I haven't seen a single person so far.
I wonder if there's a way we can hijack this shit and make it a thing.
I mean, in a way, I think it's a lot. It's behind. From what I'm seeing, is there is more representation of people of color are getting there in fashion in general, I think, or at least there's a little more movement there. It kind of looks like goth is just behind, like they haven't caught up with the rest of the world a little bit. I mean, it's nowhere near what it should be, but in mainstream fashion world.
And then you have websites like Dolls Kill, and they have people of color and they have black people, but then they have this problem. Yeah, they have this problem with, you know, I mean, they got burned like 3 times for like cultural appropriation
the
and
white thing that's still going around.
Which
I'm so proud of, because I'm pretty sure my face is on a dartboard somewhere in their office. Like, listen, I've made it. Okay. I've always viewed goth as ahead, but it's still not quite there. And then it's like mainstream, like goth is the it thing still a little bit. So mainstream is following goth and is like 2 steps behind, and goth is like 2 steps behind itself of this like actually being inclusive and giving a shit. It's so close. It's so close. But the thing is, I know it's not good enough, that we're not there yet. And it's so hard.
I think part of the problem where it falls down is that goths they kind of feel like they're already the outsiders and they're marginalized because they're goths, and that we kind of get lazy, that there's this idea that because we're subverting gender norms through like some kind of androgyny, that we're being transgressive to the mainstream and we're picked on for looking weird, and so that means that we've kind of got it figured out, so we don't need to really engage with intersectionality or or talk about that kind of representation because we are already
We're so
enlightened
progressive.
intellectuals or whatever. Yeah.
But what, like, oh my God, like maybe last year or so, there were people who were joking, like, if mainstream culturally appropriated goth, and there were some people who took the joke seriously, and they were like, yeah, like I get beat up for being goth and all this stuff. And it's like, you can take it off though.
Right, exactly.
And that's like the hardest thing, because I get how significant it is to people, and I don't want to invalidate that, but you can take it off. If someone put a gun to your head and said, I'm going to kill you and your whole family unless you change into like khakis right now, you could do it. And being Black and being female, being trans, being non-binary, you cannot change that. It's you no matter where you go.
Yeah.
And like, it's one of the hard things where you can't explain it to people without being crucified.
Well, no one is systemically repressing goth people and preventing them from getting jobs or housing or policing their movements. I mean,
well, I mean it's like it's it's institutional though, because you have police going to, predominantly Black neighborhoods and putting kids into the prison system, which puts like a permanent mark on the rest of their lives, and then they can systemically be discriminated against when they're trying to get a job or government housing or whatever, and they're put into this system, that this like legal caste system, and that's not something that a white goth kid has to worry about as much as. And that's the thing, when these issues get brought up, and then you have it always comes back to the white person of saying, well, I get hurt too, and that just invalidates the experiences of other people, because it always has to come back to how the white person feels, which is completely fucked up. I'm getting a little
drunk. Like, let's talk some real shit. Hang on.
Okay, well that might actually be it. I finished my beers. That's
it's
true.
A good night.
And I mean that kind of goes to that like white privilege thing, which I hear people give me pushback for, which I guess like the kind of people are usually like, well, I'm white and I can't pay my electricity bill next month. Where's my white privilege kind of thing?
Yeah.
And it's the intuition pump I like to use is to say, okay, imagine your situation is completely the same, but now you're also a trans Black person. How much worse are you off now?
Right.
As a white man, I don't have to if I need legal or medical help, I don't have to worry about my race working against me.
Right. You're automatically given more credibility.
Yeah.
Like when I first moved here, somebody started a rumor that I was a stripper from Compton. I am like a middle class Black girl who grew up in a white community from fucking small town Northern California. Like, what?
God.
Yeah. So it's just like, I get the white privilege thing, and people immediately think of their own personal problems. But then that means they just don't understand, where it's like, when I walk into a room, I know how the power dynamics work, especially if it's middle-aged white men. I get it. I'm immediately exotic. I have to play like, hi, I'm a cute girl. I love this stuff. I'm so dumb. Like, someone help me. When I'm actually incredibly capable. Like, that's just how it works.
Oh.
Yeah. My experiences have not been fun.
It's not good.
It's getting better, though. I'm much happier.
Yeah.
Being an asshole.
Good. Good. Yes. Yes. Fuck politeness, as they say.
Like, I say that, but like my thing is,
Yeah. Oh my God. We have my wife listens to that podcast. We have a floral framed poster of that fuck politeness in our bathroom.
Nice.
Like, my thing is, I'm not going to make my experiences, my rage, my sadness smaller to make myself more palatable, when I know that if I cause a scene, if I cause an uproar right now, sure, I look bad as an individual, but the next like 3-5 Black girls who come up and have to have their feelings validated, they stand a much better chance if I am a loud jackass now. And I'll do it.
Yeah.
I've had enough wine.
Yeah.
I don't give a fuck.
Yeah. No, it's true.
Well, and I mean that's the thing. It is harder because when you're you have the unholy trifecta of racism, sexism, and capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're a black woman trying to assert yourself, you're basically critiquing the entire culture. And that puts you in a position where you have to take the weight of the entire system on that you're fighting against.
And I look so
And,
good with all these muscles from carrying everyone. It's so hot.
I'm going to bring up one more thing that might make me unpopular. But, there's the person of color term. I don't really like when it's abbreviated as POC. I don't want to be called a POC. I think it detaches the truth of the term, of what it is. So when somebody calls somebody else a POC, it's like you've put it into this nice little box and taken away the definition so that they don't have to think about it anymore.
Can I do something terrible?
Actually, I'm not really crazy about the term itself. Oh.
Like, it's too close to POS as well.
Yeah.
Can I?
That's what I think about too.
Like, who came up with this? So I don't know if the term will be around for a long time, but
So what you're saying is,
I don't really care for it.
put some respect on my name.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Say the full thing.
I've never liked POC. I've never liked person of. It's so oddly
Scientific.
Scientific or bureaucratic or something. I'm just like black and brown people.
We have to.
It's cold.
We have
There's
to
no
label
emotion
things like
behind
that.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is. It's like
it's very default.
Like we're a species of mushroom that needs to be identified.
Mushroom.
Or it's like we can't think of anything better, so we'll just say people of color or something. I don't know. Yeah, it rubs me the wrong way too.
It sounds, Moss, what you're saying sounds similar to the term Native American, which is like, well, there's hundreds of different indigenous tribes that all have their own customs and identities, and you're reducing all of that to this one,
Wait,
you are
so
this
Mouse,
one.
Yeah.
Do you prefer?
Yeah.
I like First Nation.
Do you prefer Caribbean American or Trinidadian American?
I don't really have to go by a label
Okay.
because I never have a conversation with anybody who has to bring that up. I mean, I was born in America, so I'm just American.
I get that.
Why can't I be just American?
Not disagreeing. I respect that. I prefer Trinidadian American, having been written over as like when people say African American to me, I'm very aware that they place upon on that title the expectations of what they think an African American is like, when I don't even fall into that category to begin with. So going by Trinidadian American makes me feel like I'm reclaiming my heritage, and I'm very proud to be a Trinidadian.
I think also
most
using
people don't know
they really
anything
don't,
about
so
that,
I'm going to show
about
them.
Trinidad.
And I think also using African American as a general blanket term for anybody who happens to be black is reductive in itself. It's its own form of racism because, as you say, not everybody who's black is African. You could be African, you could be Caribbean, you could be Australian.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm
that's
sure
why the term
several
isn't
other
used
areas.
that much anymore.
I like black too.
I just like black. It's just
I like
It's just
black.
easy.
Like, it makes sense. We get it. We got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter if we're like, what shade of black we are. We're just black. Because if you're even
exactly
10% black, you're black.
right. Exactly.
I have a question.
Which, by the way, go watch that movie Us. Go watch Get Out. I am
Yes.
condoning these because, like, usually you see movies that have, black people in it, and they're all comedies. I Took Your Man, Tyler Perry's, blah blah blah,
Hate
whatever.
Tyler
But this
Perry.
is like a
With every
serious
fiber
like
of my
horror
being.
movie.
Or
And
even
to
in
break into
horror.
Yeah.
To break into like the psychological genre, like dark movies. You've got dark movies with dark people.
Yeah. God
haven't
bless
seen
Jordan
that.
Peele.
I would also
Yeah, thank
add
you,
to
Jordan.
that list of movies. Oh my God, what was the new one? What was it called? What Men Really Think. If you want like
Oh, God,
a
yeah.
lighthearted doesn't take itself too seriously film that also briefly touches on the perception of race in a clever way. I would say go watch that. It was a lovely afternoon, and it didn't leave me like super depressed and thinking about like my place in the world. So just in case. And Erykah Badu's in it, and she did such a
Okay.
fucking good job. So like it's
Ooh.
unbelievable. Like I
Love
didn't
her.
know she could do that.
Well, given that, I may give it a shot. When I first saw ads about it, I'm like, I don't like this from a gendered perspective. Was my main issue around
I totally
just
understand.
the premise.
It's
But
very
let me take a look
sweet.
at it.
The ending is really good. The hero doesn't win everything, and I appreciate that. It's very real, down to earth, and if you want just to like watch something fun that isn't going to make your head hurt, it's a really good movie for that. But I have a question
Cool.
to wrap this up. Brother dear, what is one thing that people could do right now that would help the relationship that like people of color, goths of color, have with goth as a whole? Like one of the obvious things that comes to mind is like just promoting other goths of color, because I still don't see a lot of that, even though people like the quality of content has gotten so much better. It's on par. And the only reason people seem to not want to watch is because of their preconceived notions about goths of color.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Representation. It matters.
Yeah.
Especially representation that just happens to be there, not that it's pointed out, not that it's a special, one night only, all black performers. It's something that is just,
Right.
it's something that just happens. It's like,
Yeah.
here's
I
a
would roll
festival,
my eyes
and we've
so
got
hard.
some black
Yeah.
performers and some female performers and some white performers, and they're just performers. But we're seeing that
Give
diversity
points.
within it without having to,
Without it being
highlight,
forced.
put these
Yeah.
big,
Yeah.
we don't need all that tokenism in there.
Yeah.
And I'd say also from a standpoint of someone who doesn't necessarily have a platform and who isn't a promoter or someone who books bands or anything like that, but just as someone who attends and is a participant in the community, just being the one that will, if someone looks a little bit confused and out of place, just introduce yourself, welcome them, make them feel comfortable no matter what their appearance is, and just reach out. And the more you do that, then the more comfortable people of all types will be to be involved in the scene. And as more diversity comes in, people see that diversity and goes, oh, this is a space that is welcoming of my kind of goth, or whatever is going through their mind. Just making it that safe space is making it welcoming. And it's up to us as members of the community to do that welcoming.
As you say that, I would argue that it doesn't matter if your position is like you only have 50 followers or you're not a promoter or something. Anytime you use the goth label and you identify as a part of the community, you have an opportunity to support that community. And you should.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Get outside of, I have heard people use that excuse of, well, the only music I see or the only bands DJs I hear are white people. Well, guess what? You have the internet.
You can do it. I believe.
You can do a little bit more work.
If you put on pants today, you can find a black artist to support.
Oh, I have one.
That'll be a
I'd
problem
like to
for me.
recommend for you guys.
Do you not wear pants?
Well, not today.
Oh, well, I'm so sorry.
I'm wearing a skirt right now.
Okay.
Well,
So I
congratulations.
have a black artist that I'd like to share.
Yes, please do.
On Bandcamp. His name is Scary Black.
Oh, God.
That's the name of his project. He is a dark-skinned guy with a beautiful dark wave voice. You would never see it coming. Go check him out.
All right.
I have not heard of that band, but I will now.
Scary Black.
Oh, have we heard of Black Lamb Clothing? They are a black...
Yes.
Yes, we have.
They have fun stuff.
They're
Yeah. I
really
like their
cute.
yeah, they have cute stuff.
Yeah,
I like their Make America Goth Again hat.
Yeah, so they're a black-owned business.
Gothic Lamb?
Is it Gothic Lamb?
Is that what you mean?
Dumb?
It's Gothic. Yeah, it's Gothic
I'm
Lamb.
sorry. It's Gothic Lamb. I'm a potato. Leave me with my wine.
I like their tagline, the home of melanated misfits.
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah. They're pretty great.
And there are curvy girls in
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Oh, yes. No,
representation
I'm
there.
matters.
Curvy girls, dark-skinned
Yeah.
girls.
I
I'm
want
looking
this
down this front page
antisocial
and I'm
black
loving
girl
it.
too.
I love all these girls. Oh,
So Scary Black, Gothic Lamb. What else we got?
There's one
well,
person
there's
I
classic stuff like
I'm obsessed with this artist, and he's not. I wouldn't even consider him it's not really goth music. His name's M. Lamar, and he is a performance artist, musician, who his music is his videos, his look, his style is pure classic goth, but his music and his sound is this combination of opera and like old Negro spirituals and like
What?
the Amanda Gallus screams. It's
Holy
amazing. And
shit.
all of his music is about sort of blackness and darkness. And I'll put a link up here, but
Something in my life.
yeah, he sings in this. Yeah, and he sings in this soprano. So he's kind of like Leontine Price, but in a goth dude. It's amazing.
Wow.
I'll show it
I'm
to you.
into it.
He's
Apparently,
very.
he's apparently also Laverne Cox's twin brother.
He is.
What? Fucking
He is.
what? Hang on, my
Yes.
face can't deal with
Yes.
the emotion it's trying to
Wow.
make right now. What is happening?
I'm putting the
gonna
link
cry.
on
I
the
love
message now.
her.
Yeah. When I first saw him, he absolutely blew my mind, and I was like, "This is the person I've been
I
looking for my whole
apologize
life."
deeply for sleeping on this. Like, my bad. The potato intensifies. I'm sorry.
He did a show at the Cloisters in New York at the Met, which is the old medieval castle or whatever. It's the medieval wing of the Met. So it's in this stone chapel with this gigantic crucifix from the Middle Ages hanging down. And he's just like screaming and groaning and playing the piano. And he's got this kind of Sun Ra Afro-futurist cape on. And it was
I love it.
magical. Yeah. So I would definitely check out MLR.
Wow.
Yeah.
I can make a couple quick recommendations since we're going to wrap up here. Obviously, The Breathing Light, who was unfortunately not here. They're playing a show with Death in a couple weeks, which if you don't know Death, they're like a 70s punk band that they did funk music and punk rock. Really, really fucking good. Bastet is a newer post-punk band that I am really into. It's all women, and they're just like straight up post-punk, really good. And then Witch Hands, I would recommend. I think I've mentioned them before, but they're like death rock and mix some other influences, some other genre influences in there with their music. So as far as Zach, you were mentioning what else we can do. I think I had a couple other suggestions that didn't get mentioned. I would say just for people who aren't promoters and DJs but are, well, specifically white men, don't allow a racist comment to go unanswered. And when you're with other men and someone makes a sexist comment or a transphobic comment or whatever it is, you have to say no, because if you just kind of sit there in the awkwardness and don't want to speak up, that's exactly what leads to the idea that kind of thing is okay, which we all know snowballs into violence and just out and out racism and horrible things. So we, get over being uncomfortable for a minute or two. Like, you have a responsibility to say something. And then the other suggestion I had is, if people want to go, and I'll link this in the comments or in the show notes, janeelliott.com/commitment. It's the title is Commitment to Combat Racism. It's 18 questions, yes or no questions. And you go through each of these and answer yes or no. And then at the end, the suggestion is to look at the answers you answered no to and decide to do that for a month.
Wow.
And I think these are all really good, actionable, practical things that we can all incorporate into our lives. So I think that's a really good page to look at.
I appreciate you so much.
Yeah.
Hey.
I appreciate the fact that you had us on all tonight to discuss these topics.
Yeah.
This is the kind of thing that needs to get out.
Yes.
It was
absolutely.
incredibly therapeutic.
Yeah, it needs to be talked about.
I feel a lot better about who I am as a person in a weird way. Like I was validated.
Yeah, I agree.
If that's
Great.
not too much.
I would agree.
Thank you for letting me hijack your show occasionally.
You are the best. You know I love you.
I love
You're
you
the
too,
best.
babe.
You're my hero.
Stop.
All right. Well, let's it's well past midnight now, my time.
Yeah,
at least.
mine,
So
it's
let's
past
go around.
Me too. It's
It's
Yeah.
1:20
So let's mention again where we can find you online, and we'll wrap the show up. So I'll just go down the order in which you appear on the website. So Mouse.
Yeah. Find me as DJ Mouse, Maus. I'm on Facebook, SoundCloud, and Instagram with _DJ Mouse. _
Mike.
Find me playing drums with Ego Likeness, with Spider Lilies, with Angel Metro, and with Stoneburner occasionally. And probably more projects to come. I'm also, as myself, Mike K. Johnson on Facebook and Instagram.
I'm mostly on Twitter. Hello Leela. It's hello _ Leila. And pre-order my book on Amazon. Darkly, Blackness in America's Gothic Soul.
And Zachary.
If you can still tolerate me, I'm on Instagram as The Strange Goth. And that's where everything goes.
Thank you all for coming on. It's really been a pleasure to get to hang out with
Thank
all
you.
cool people.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that episode, our third installment of these series of episodes we're doing on more serious topics relating to goth culture. We'll be back in 2 weeks. We're going to be having Parma Ham, who you may know from the internet, on the episode. We're going to be chatting with them about a whole range of topics related to the goth scene. If you enjoyed this episode, if you have enjoyed the show, want to either support us to help keep us on the air or get some extra content, get early content, get access to merchandise and our Discord and other types of rewards, please consider supporting us over at patreon.com/Cemetery Confessions. I don't want to tell you what to do with your $1 per month, but considering supporting us for just $1 a month is, I hope you will consider it. It really does make a big difference. It really does add up, and it really does keep us going. Those of you who are subscribed, who are listeners, may notice that we didn't have an episode last month. Unfortunately, our guest for that show had some family issues, wasn't able to come on at the last minute at the scheduled time, and I've been unable to work out a time to reschedule with them. So rest assured, we are working on trying to figure that out. So more on that to come. If you want to stay up to date with what's happening on the show, Patreon does get updates, blog posts, those kinds of things to let them know what content is coming up and any sort of last minute changes like that. Thank you so much for hanging out with us for this episode. We really appreciated your company. But that's it for now. So until next time, stay dark.
The preceding program is a member of The Belfry, a network of blogs, podcasts, and videos for the darkly inclined. Go to thebelfry.rip for more information.